So this is a handover for the AutoSleepers Nuevo models. We'll begin on the outside of the van. Towards the centre middle, you've got a selection of equipment. We'll start off with the gas system. This has an onboard gas load tank. When you're wanting to refill, remove the outside cap, a little bit like a fuel pump, you have a trigger assembly, you squeeze in, and that will allow the van to be filled with gas.
To turn the gas on, underneath the vehicle you'll see a large black box. At the bottom of that black box there is a plastic clip. Undo that clip and the front of the box comes free. Inside there you'll see a brass ring. Turn it anti-clockwise to open the valve. Turn it all the way till it comes to its end stop and then turn it back a fraction. Then you can return the cover. The only time you're likely to be required to close that off will be if you're shutting the vehicle down totally for winter months, or if you're going onto a ferry. The ferry operator may want you to disconnect your gas at source. If the gas has been disconnected at source, the regulator, which is now being pointed to now, is a drive safe regulator. It has a reset button which is round the other side of the vehicle, but you'll feel it quite simply. Press that in for a count of 3 and then release, and that is the gas regulator reset. That regulator will only need to be reset if you switch the gas off completely, or if the vehicle has been involved in a collision, because that's a safety cutout valve that senses any vibration from an impact. To lock everything back in place, just push that back plastic clip firmly home.
Return to the outside of the vehicle, and next along you have an external 12-volt socket and an external coaxial, also an external satellite. So these feeds can be fed into the van and enable you to use site connections instead of using the aerial on board. Alongside, the option of using a submersible pump to fill the onboard freshwater tank. On the opposite side there is a standard freshwater filler cap. Exhaust vent for the heating system. The heating system is being used on gas. You may see a condensation plume coming off of that. It's perfectly normal. And we come to your mains cable. So mains hook up. Connect to the side of the van first of all by pushing the flap in nice and firmly, and then connect to your power supply in that order. When you want to disconnect, switch off your power supply at the wall and then push down on the blue tag and pull the whole exterior unit out. Fold that over nice and firmly. So your toilet cassette typically comes with a Thetford key to gain access to it. Press both studs in at the same time. The cassette is removable by you lifting up the blue flap at the base, sliding the whole body of the cassette towards you. If there's any resistance, don't force it. Go back inside and make sure that the blade on the toilet is shut properly. On a campsite, you'll have collection points for these to go into. To remove the blue cap altogether, tip up over the receiving unit, press the blue button in at the top, and that should allow your waste mix to come out of the bottom. Before you load it back in, you use chemicals up to a cupful or a sachet, all mixed in through there and diluted with about 2 litres of water to give you a little cocktail to break down the waste for the next run around. Slide the whole unit back in nice and firmly. Should hear a clunk as it locks back in, indicating that it's safe. And then lock up your door afterwards. So low down on the skirts of the van, typically on the driver's side, you have a blue, and then towards the rear of the vehicle, grey water outlets for winter storage or for draining the waste before you depart on a longer journey. Open up the main tap and allow the water to discharge out. On this AutoSleeper, you have vents for the fridge. These come with winter covers. Now, I use my winter covers to stop the muck and debris from getting into the back of the fridge when the vehicle is in storage. Up here in this climate, it's beneficial to leave the winter covers in position. Perhaps if you're traveling because of the wind chill factor, especially through the winter months, sometimes even through the summer as well, it stops the fridge from potentially warming back up. Also, if you're stationary, it's allowing heat to be actually retained into the back of the fridge so that the cooling process can continue. Generally speaking though, once you get above probably around about 5 or 6 degrees as an average mean temperature, then you take the covers off and it allows the entire appliance to actually breathe, whether it's on 12-volt mains or gas. So I've already mentioned that you've got an inlet for using a submersible pump on the outside. Generally, the majority of owners will use the filler cap on the outside and just use a hose pipe. Most caravan sites only give you a tap. They expect you to have your own water hose with you. If you're traveling long distances, I would advise that you only have a minimal amount of water in the system to drain off before you travel. Otherwise, fill up once you get onto site, and that should give you a plentiful water supply. On this generation, it's around about 100 litres of fresh water. Alongside, you've got an external gas barbecue point. Little fitting coupling has been left in situ, ready for your use. So cut this one off, connect it to the end of your gas barbecue, and then the beveled end goes up inside of here. Turn this one on, and that allows you then to draw the gas through. Turn it back through 90 degrees when you want to shut the gas supply off. Further along, we have an external mains. So if you're plugged in onto mains, you want to use mains perhaps out underneath the awning, then you can connect up accordingly. Access lockers, there are two. One here at the top for you to load into, and this can be accessed from underneath the side wood facing bed. And then there is a lower locker which is externally mounted that allows you to use things like leveling wedges, mains hookups, cables. It's only a small shallow locker, but it's very useful for that purpose. Fuel filler cap. Ignition key to access the filler. Hang the filler cap onto the hook at the bottom if you wish. All right, to allow you to fill up with diesel. This has also got an AdBlue system on it. Typically the AdBlue is added around service intervals. If you are using the vehicle a lot though, you may find that you have to top it up yourself. There's an indicator that will come on the dashboard to tell you if AdBlue is required. Closing this is not affected by the central locking, so even if the vehicle is locked and secured, this flap can still be opened. Inside the cab on the left-hand side, you have got your bonnet release. Very briefly, below the floor, you've got your engine battery, and then underneath the seat box, you also have your vehicle toolkit. Make sure that you remove the entire flap before you try and lift the toolkit out, otherwise you'll break the flap. So under the bonnet, center lever, pull up, put your stay into position. Over on the left hand side, you've got your screen wash position, so just pop open the cap, maybe a funnel or a spout to enable you to assist that. If you're needing to top up the brake fluid, the radiator water or the power steering fluid, you'll need to unlock these little clips so that you can gain access to that. You'll probably still need to use a funnel as well. Oil filler cap, it's fairly obvious and centrally located, but in the middle of the engine cover, there is your oil dipstick. Because of the position of the engine battery, you may well find that if you do need to jump start the vehicle, that you'll need to do a couple of things. Rather than trying to connect to the battery itself, this little flap which you can pop up and open, and the positive of your crocodile clip can go onto that section there, and then the negative goes onto this earth bolt which is located there, and you should be able to safely jump start the vehicle. So AutoSleepers are fitted with an awning, put the T of the pole up inside to the slot, stand back slightly, and then roll the awning out accordingly. Get it out to a distance where you can reach the inside of the pelmet. Typically it's about 2/3 of the way out, and pause with the winding mechanism. These are spring loaded, so push back on the foot plates first of all, bring the whole leg, let it fall through your fingers, let it slide down, and then secure it with the plate flat to the floor. The locking mechanism does require some effort, so just on the point that you think that it's actually going to snap or break, you should be able to then apply. It's the same story for the opposite leg. So to recap, make sure that the foot is flat, slide it down through, and then lock off your leg like so. Continue winding the awning out, walking the legs out at the same time. Total distance or range on these is around about 2.5 meters. They are designed as sunshades. In wet or windy conditions, we would always advise you put them away because the airflow wants to get up underneath it and try and lift it. Heavy rainfall can actually damage the awning as well. It's the reverse of putting it away. So fold your leg back in. Make sure that the foot is flat against the outside pelmet edge. Same thing on the opposite side. And then to wind it back in, just basically draw the whole awning back in like so. Should hear a bit of a clunk when it finally goes into position. So your exterior step is controlled by you pressing your finger onto the button and it should automatically extend, and press it again to retract. If you start the vehicle up, however, it will automatically close. So when you're setting up the water system, it's important that you draw water initially through the hot tap. Your cold water feed will come out almost instantaneously. However, on the hot water supply, you may have to wait a couple of minutes for it to purge through the water heater itself. Eventually you'll end up with an even flow coming out of your kitchen tap. Repeat the process with the vanity unit and with the shower. Even if you have no intention of using it, it just ensures that there aren't any airlocks in the system. We preheated this tank earlier, so you can see the steam rising up off of the flow as we speak. You have a swivel bowl toilet fitted on this model, so it's designed to move the bowl around. Towards the front, you have a lever that you pull forward, and that enables a wastegate to open up into the base, so you let your waste go straight through. To flush water comes from an onboard freshwater reservoir, your main tank. Push down on the blue button, and you should see some jets of water going around the inside of the bowl, like so. Make sure that the slider is shut firmly over to stop any smells or odours, and if it's not shut properly, it will prohibit you from emptying or removing the cassette.
And now to turn our attention to the AutoSleeper and the Truma control panel. Starting with the AutoSleeper panel, a simple touch wakes the panel up. The on-off button is here, and you can see it has been set so that the interior lights and the exterior awning light comes on with the power. You can change that in the settings, so let's go here first and go into the settings, and then we will work through the settings till we get to, here we go. Lights will be switched on with power button, and we've got main lights and awning light coming on. So let's go back home. So that's what's happened when we've switched on. Water pump on off switch is here. Get into the habit of using that on demand. There is no water in the system at the moment, so obviously we're getting the warning that the water level is low. Let's have a look at those water levels, and you can see fresh tank and waste tank are both empty. They have been drained down for the winter. Battery condition. Here we can see that the leisure battery and the vehicle battery are both showing full charge at 12 volts. We have active battery current coming from the leisure. There's a little bit being taken from the leisure battery, as you can see over here, because we have the lights on inside the van. Mains current and solar current. Well, at the moment there is nothing coming through on either. It's an overcast day, so no energy coming from the solar panel, and as far as mains current is concerned, we're not plugged into mains, so there's nothing showing there. Vehicle or leisure, you can choose which battery to run on. We recommend you always run on the leisure battery. Now, going back into the settings here, heating status is off, water status is off. Now, you
control all of those from the Truma panel, and it's much better to do that way, although there is the opportunity to preset temperatures and timers on this control panel, but it is so much simpler to operate that from this one. Here we have power settings, active battery select. We've gone for smart at the moment, so we're automatically selecting the leisure battery as the best choice battery. And for solar battery, we've got it set on smart at the moment, and it is charging any solar energy going to the vehicle battery, but we could select the leisure battery instead. And smart will mean when the leisure battery is full, it will automatically switch to the vehicle battery. If we haven't selected smart, when those batteries are at full charge, then the smart charger will switch off. Moving over to this side here, automatic tank fill only if you're on a fully functioning site and permanently connected to the water, and we have the tank heaters below there. Obviously in the winter, if you've got water in any of them, you can then switch on the heater, and that will stop you getting a burst pipe. We've already been to this screen, and here we have screen settings. Do you want the beep on or off? Do you want the water level alarm on or off? Tank fill beeps, so when you're on fully automatic, that will beep when the tank is full. Background light level for this panel, and screen timeout. It's the time it takes for the screen to go completely black when it goes to sleep. You can adjust all those to your own personal preferences. Set the time, 24-hour clock or 12-hour clock, time and date settings there. Heater settings for the Truma. We've already been to this screen. In fact, that's us gone full circle. So let's go back to the home screen and move over to the Truma panel. Now, it's vitally important before you switch on the Truma panel that you switch on this panel and switch on the 12-volt supply button in that corner. The first thing this panel does when it switches on is it goes looking for a 12-volt supply for its operation. It needs that 12 volts to operate the fan for the central heating. It needs that 12 volts to ignite the gas for the heating and the hot water. If it can't find the 12 volts, it will give you an error code. So you must always put this panel on first, and then press the home button to bring this panel up. And you have to unlock the screen, and then you have a choice: room climate, hot water, iNet app, notifications, settings, and an on-off switch. So if we were going to switch it off, we just go to the on-off switch. We have the choice of going to standby or turn off. Let's select turn off, and it's turning off. Now you must wait until this screen goes completely blank before coming over here and switching off this screen. So it's a complete reverse of what we had to turn the screen on, but you must wait till this goes blank. Let it finish its shutdown program before you switch it off. Otherwise, during its shutdown program, it's still looking for that 12-volt supply, and if you don't supply it, you'll get an error code. So here we are. Let's go into the room climate, and we have a choice. Do you want to ventilate or do you want to heat? If you choose ventilation, you operate the air conditioning unit. If you choose heating, you operate the heating. Now, air conditioning will only run on 240 volts when you're plugged in on a campsite, whereas heating, if you go to the fuel source, you can have gas on or off, electric on or off. With electric, you have a choice of 900 watts or 1800 watts. We're not plugged into mains, so we would go with gas. So that's our choice of fuel. Back button here takes us back to the control, and very simply select the temperature you wish. This is the temperature sensor. When the ambient temperature around this sensor reaches this temperature, the boiler will switch off. So comfort, nice gentle increase in the heat. Fast, very cold day gets the heating on and up and running quicker. If it's a very cold day and you want the heating to come on really quick, you can choose gas and electric. Doesn't get any hotter. Let's switch this off because we're not connected. See, there we go, no operating voltage because we're not plugged into mains. It doesn't get any hotter it just gets up to temperature quicker. So let's go back to the main screen and switch the heating off. Had I left the heating on, I'll just demonstrate that again. Had I left the heating on and gone back to the main screen, you would see a line up here. So it's green at the moment because it hasn't reached temperature. Once it reaches temperature, that changes colour to red. So let's enter, switch the heating off, takes us back to the home screen. Absolutely identical for the water. Once you turn the water on, you get a choice of fuel, gas, electric, gas and electric, or 60 and 40. Only two choices of temperature for water. 40, ideal for doing dishes. 60, if you were going to have a shower. In fact, it even says here, dishes and shower. So faster heating will automatically, if you select that, will automatically bring on electric and gas. At the moment it's greyed out because we're not plugged in to an electric power source. Switch it off. iNet and app. If you come across here, you'll see that the vehicle is fitted with an Avtex Wi-Fi unit with aerials, and it's like a router in your home. If you put a SIM card into there and activate it, you will be able to operate this panel from anywhere in the world with an internet connection and the app on your phone. If you're really lazy, you can do it on Bluetooth in the van, but it's only about 4 or 5 feet at maximum from any of the seats in the van and the control panel. So it's more of a novelty really. If you're sitting outside and you want to turn on the hot water for a shower but don't want to leave the comfort of your picnic seat and table, then you could just do that. Right, notifications. If anything goes wrong, if you get a warning code, it will appear here. Enter notifications, read what it says. It'll give you instruction on what to do, whether you have to do a reset or contact an engineer. Turn off, we've been to already. Settings, very similar to settings on the other control panel. You can set the date and time. You can go into general, the brightness of your display, the language, a factory reset, touch calibration. If you find you're touching a button and it's not working, you can run through the touch calibration, which will, in fact, I'll show you just now. It just gives you a few crosses that you have to press. And there you go. Recalibrate. I've just done it twice. Should have gone back to the home screen there. Once you've done whatever you want to do with the home screen and you're deciding to switch off, power off, go to turn off, wait until the screen goes completely blank, then you can come over here, wake up the panel and switch it off. And that is your AutoSleeper and your Truma control panel.
So your Thetford fridge, to turn the appliance on and off, use the raised square on the left hand side, press and hold in for a couple of seconds and all of the characters light up. There's 2 touchscreen squares. Touchscreen square number 1 enables you to choose between the different settings. This is a 3-way application, so there is a mains application, a battery application for when the vehicle is being driven, and then a gas application when you are stationary and you are wild camping. 4th application that's available is referred to as A, Auto. The fridge intelligently selects which is the strongest power source available to it and opts to use that source. After a few seconds, the screen will go blank. That's perfectly normal. If you look very closely at the inside of the square there, you may well see a small blue light indicating that it's on. If the blue light is constant, the fridge is running on an application. If it begins to flash, then it suggests that there might be a fault. So changing over the settings, fairly straightforward. You'd use the 12 volt when you're traveling from A to B. All it does is maintain the temperature within the fridge. It's not there to act as any cooling. So if you set up the appliance the night before you travel, make sure that the ground that you're on is nice and level, or the vehicle itself is nice and level so that the fridge will work to its efficiency, and then begin cooling the fridge down. When you set up and start up the engine, the alternator provides a feed through to the fridge, which then sustains that temperature for the duration of your journey. You arrive on campsite, and you may well plug back into the mains, for example, or if you were wild camping, then you would set it up onto the gas. The other illustration is for the output. So the more of these white cubes that are lit up, the colder the fridge will become. This time of year, you probably find that you're using it on the 2 or the 3. As we go into an English summer, possibly 3 or 4, perhaps on a continental summer, you may find that you're using it on the 5th setting. They don't have a temperature setting code to them. It's down to the ambient heat that's available to you outside. When you finish using the appliance, press and hold on the button for a few seconds and actually make the control panel go blank. And you'll see that there's no indicator light at the top of the switch. And then for storage, just inside the fridge door, there's a little latch which you can pull forward and it just tucks up underneath. And that enables then the fridge door to space off so that you get less mildew build up inside. So you have a gas oven and hob which has one mains electric hot plate. The mains hot plate will only work if you are stationary and plugged into the national grid. At the base of the cooker on the back, on the left hand side, you will see that there is a power socket with a switch onto it. That is the mains power supply to that hob unit. I have known customers in the past, they've put plates or pots in and they've knocked the switch off and then wondered why the electric elements are not working. So for the gas hob to work, use the igniter, which is over on the right hand side, select the burner that you want to use, press and hold it up for a couple of seconds and it will light up. If you've recently refilled the gas system, then you might benefit from burning some gas off on the hob. On the subject of the onboard gas tank, never let it run empty. Once you get down to about a quarter of a tank, we'll show you where the tank indicator is later on when we're in the cab, then I would recommend that you go and get the gas system refilled. If you let them run out, it causes more problems trying to recommission the system. So that's all the gas hob side of things. Oh, one last thing to quickly show you. There's an isolator on these lids, so if this comes forward, it will cause the gas flow to cut off. You need to make sure that the lid is right back to allow the gas flow to come through in the opposite way. For the electric hob, it's just a matter of just turning the dial through, and as long as you've plugged into mains, you will notice that the hot plate starts to warm up. Grill and oven. The grill, left hand knob, and again hold it in for a few seconds and you should see a nice crisp blue flame come through there. Like so. And then for the hob, for the oven I should say, again turn that one around. There are temperature settings on the oven rather than flame settings. So underneath your seat box you have the frost valve for the water heating, room heating system. At the moment we've got it set up so that the water flow can draw through the unit. So you'll see that there is a blue tap which is in line with the water feed running through the system. So that's going to allow the water, so you'd purge the water through the taps so that you've got a constant flow of water coming out of your hot taps before you start using the water heater. Manually, you can turn it through 90 degrees and it will allow the content of the water heater to discharge. You would do that if you were setting up for winter storage, for example, where you're not going to be using the valve for a long period of time. It's beneficial to do it during the summer just to stop the water within the system from stagnating. When you're draining the water heater off, it's very important that you open all of the interior taps. So leave the water pump switched off, open the taps on the kitchen sink, the vanity unit and the shower to allow the airflow to go all the way back through the pipe work and drain off. To recommission the valve, you need to do two things. You need to first of all turn it back through 90 degrees, it can go in either direction, and then at the base of the unit there is a small blue stud which just pops out. Press that one back in and then you should be able to refill the unit. These are thermostatically set, so in the event of the air temperature in here going below 2 degrees centigrade, this valve will automatically open. don't rely on that for your draining system if you're careless or if you forget to drain the water system off, because there's still other parts of the van that are vulnerable to freezing. The reset point on this one is about 8 degrees plus. All right, so when you turn this one back in, if you find that the blue button isn't going back in, what I would suggest is actually warming up the van. So maybe put the room heater on only rather than the water heating system on. Leave it for about half an hour or so. There's a bit of heat, latent heat, which runs around inside this, and it should enable you then to reset that valve switch and then obviously re-purge the water heater back through. You can run the heater without water, but having water in it, I would advise, is beneficial to the unit. It stops the unit from overheating. You can tend to run it for a longer period of time. So there are a couple of control panels also underneath this seat box. The EC700 one is connected to all of the 12 volt and main supply within the van. At the moment we've got it in an on position, so there's a system shutdown button. All right, that button is depressed at the moment, meaning that it's actually on. If you turn off here, you shut off all of the 12 volt supply within the van. It will isolate the step if the step has been left out, so it prevents the step from being drawn back in. If you set off and drive the vehicle, there is no longer a relationship between the engine battery and the leisure battery as far as recharging. So always, whenever you want to use the 12 volt system, whether you're plugged into mains or not, this needs to be switched on, and you'll hear the control panel bleep back into life when you do so. Behind the first smoke screen, you have your interior fuses. You'll need to refer to the AutoSleepers handbook for a definition of which fuse is which. They are numbered along the bottom rows, just out of line of the camera positioning at the moment. But in essence, they are the interior fuses for the lights, the water pumps, igniters, so on and so forth. The numbering just shown there. On the opposite side, you have your mains control switches. These are the MCB and RCD switches for the main supply. It's preferable to start with all of the RC and MCB switches switched off. Connect to the side of your van first of all, and then connect to the power supply that you're going to be using. To test the circuit to make sure that it's safe to use, lift up the end switch, press the test button, and it should immediately trip out, indicating that the main supply that's coming into the van is safe for you to use. In the event of a failure, in the event of a fault, this switch will always trip out. Turn it back on, and then you can then bring up the remaining MCB switches, and these are connected to your power sockets, the main supply to the water heater, battery chargers, so on and so forth, fridge as well. If you are not plugged into mains, your mains power supply will not work. So if you try and use one of the 3-pin plugs, or try and use the microwave perhaps, if you are in a lay-by for example, they won't work unless you've actually physically connected to the mains supply. It might be that if you're traveling to the continent, when you turn on and set up your main supply, you may see a red light come on here, referring to reverse polarity. Sometimes some continental posts are round the other way. Take advice on what the best steps are to overcome that. Green light on indicates that the battery charger is on, so that will work all the time to try and replenish the battery supply whilst you're consuming it. It has its own self-regulator built into it, so it will work in conjunction with your appliance use and your 12 volt use, cutting in and cutting out whenever necessary, as long as you are plugged into the main supply. Whenever you are plugged in, you're also able to use your water heater or your room heating system. If this is switched off, it'll throw up an error code on the control panel, because the control system will only be able to work on gas. So always make sure that if you are plugged into mains, that both that green and that amber light are switched on. The little fuse board at the back is purely, I describe it as the link between the cab and the rear of the vehicle. So if there are power supply which comes from the alternator through to the fridge, for example, there's a power supply which comes from the vehicle battery, so that you can access the vehicle battery if you need to in an emergency, but it also acts as the linking bridge between the alternator and the leisure battery as well. So on the 4-berth models, you have a folding bunk deck which comes down. You can fold things up and you can stash things behind it. It's safe enough to travel. My preference though with the 4-berth though is that you bring both mattresses into position and then use the cargo net, and that then gives you additional storage up into the front. There are 12-volt strip lights which are usable on either side, and they can be turned on from the control panel at the front, as well as obviously on their own individual switches. Make sure whenever you're traveling, especially if you've got children, that you do with your departure checks, that you make sure that all of your roof lights and windows are securely closed. If they open whilst the vehicle's in transit, then it can lead to a weakening of the joints and cause them to break off. So moving into the cab of the vehicle, it's fairly straightforward and classical controls, but you've got your exterior lights, side lights and main beam on the top left hand stalk. Lower down you've got your limiter and cruise control, which can be set up accordingly using the plus and minus controls to regulate that speed output, and then your wiper controls are over onto the right hand side stalk, and obviously pull back for your screen wash if that's what's required. Just ahead of that you've also got a front fog light and also your headlamp beam adjustment down onto this side as well. On the driver's door you've got electric windows, central locking control, and also your adjustment for your electric mirrors to turn the toggle in the direction of the mirror that you want to adjust, and you should find that when you move the joystick it adjusts the mirror accordingly. Blind spot mirrors can be adjusted as well to give you best line of vision. I mentioned earlier in the handover that you've got an onboard gas tank. The gas tank level indicator is down here. It only illuminates when the engine is running. All right, it's over towards the full mark at the moment, obviously as you consume your gas, so it will gradually deplete, but as I say, my recommendation is always that you keep it to around about a quarter of a tank rather than letting it run out completely. Steering wheel controls are all tied into the radio unit, so you have controls on here for telephone, for Bluetooth, as well as your volume controls as well. When you first turn on the unit, you'll see your radio controls come up, but you have the option of using a navigation system on here as well. We'll leave it in this mode so that you can follow through and set up your navigation controls and learn about the system when you are ready. And you can also set up your Bluetooth controls to tie into your phone as well. Ventilation controls fairly straightforward. So you've got the speed of the fan at the base, and then temperature control at the top, your directional and interior and exterior recirculation points as well, and then a central air conditioning button also. Heated mirrors for the side mirrors, that comes on from there. Another central locking button that you can control from here, and then your hazard light switch into the middle. ASR is a form of traction control. If you accelerate hard on the loose surface that we're on at the moment, it basically automatically gives you engine braking to stop the wheels from slipping. However, I would advise that if you were perhaps driving on wet grass or maybe in icy conditions, you might want to turn it off, and you'll see a symbol come up and it will say ASR disconnected on the head unit. And that will then give you a better balance of throttle to wheel control when you're driving in more slippery conditions. Reverse on this one, up on the collar and over for reverse, and that will engage your high level reversing camera. You can see the images shown there of the vehicle behind. As soon as you go into a forward gear, it automatically cuts out and switches off. There's a sufficient reflective surface that you should be able to see through the back window. The handbrakes on these, you do need to make sure when you set off that they are fully depressed. All right, all the way down. You have to kind of sort of reach into it. If you leave it on the first latch, you will get a buzzer or a warning bleep in the cab telling you that there's a problem. Obviously, you risk burning out your brakes. For the seat, on both driver and passenger seat, you have the ability to swivel. So there is a red paddle at the front of the seat. If you push down on it, you should be able to swivel the seat accordingly. With the handbrake side, I would suggest that you make sure that the seat is pulled forward to the maximum position so it doesn't foul. All right, it should go around nice and easily. On driver and passenger seat, you have the ability to adjust the height of the swab. So pull up on the lever and it will raise or decrease the seat. You do need to put your weight into it to get it to go down. And then you have a classic backrest adjustment and also a lumbar support adjustment on there. On the inside edges of the seats for the armrests, they've also got bezels on them as well, so you can adjust the height also. So that concludes the handover for your AutoSleepers New Evo. We're always on the end of the phone. You can always send us an email if you've got any questions, but I sincerely hope that the van's going to give you lots of miles and lots of smiles. So on behalf of Highland Camper Vans, drive, park, relax.